And I'm in the same position.
Yeah.
Oh. The meeting is hereby called to order. Is there a special thing?
Yeah, that's.
No, okay, great.
Six and four. Can you for any of the agenda?
Motion.
Really, I don't mean to be difficult, but technically speaking, the under Robert's order, the best way to proceed when you don't have your typical chairperson is to everyone vote in an active chair for the meeting. So if that would be Dawn's, I'm sorry, I can't read from the sentence. But you know, if everyone wanted to vote and then she could proceed just as if she were the chair for the meeting.
You really wouldn't do that, would you?
Would someone like to make a motion for someone to serve as acting chair for the meeting?
I make a motion for there to be an active chair voted in tonight for this meeting since our chair is not here. Second. Are there any volunteers? Sure, let's look at it.
There you go.
Oh,
There's someone way out there. There's someone way out there. They don't know to come back here.
See that on your chair? I'm so sorry. That makes that all better.
It's good to say. Good job.
Yeah.
So wait a second,
You both look good, actually.
Hello, everybody. Hopefully they don't give me a ticket at the parking meeting. Mobile meter.
No, it's not.
It's
I think I have just had.
Yes. All right, I guess I'll call to order. Yes, so motion to amend the agenda.
Second.
Okay, thank you. So we have the attorneys that will speak first.
Excellent. So everyone, hi, my name is Sherry Hines. I'm the Deputy Chief Attorney for Athens-Clarke County, and then Courtney Davis, the Senior Assistant Attorney for Athens-Clarke County, is here with me today. You know, I'm really here kind of at your pleasure until about 6:30. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. I'm happy to sort of give an overview of what's out there. I'm here for whatever you all want, and I'm not trying to figure what that is. So what would you all like to hear from me tonight?
We invited you to come to our meeting regarding the control policy that we wanted to move forward with, and we were told that we had the attorney's office look over it to make sure the policy proposal was in line with
Sure. And is the policy related to discrimination or something else?
it's a menstrual.
Oh, I'm sorry, I missed your speech. Wow.
Yeah, to have menstrual products that are public or government buildings.
Okay.
Bathrooms.
So I haven't seen that policy, but I think what I could say, just sort of very much off the cuff, is that there may be central services policies that exist that speak to that. But I can't think of a legal prohibition against providing services like that in a restroom. The question would be costs. The question would be, you know, dealing with sort of logistical challenges that would all be very like policy driven in terms of resource management. What happens if someone takes everything, like how clear those things, say repopulated, but that's not the right word. Replenished, thank you very much. So those are all very logistical concerns for staff to assist you with. I'm certainly happy to review the policy though and share my thoughts.
Because we had someone that's been working on this in Atlanta and with other like making and things like that. Through UGA that came and served us and provided. See that did not make it clear.
Yeah, no, I apologize. I understood this was more about dress code discrimination and non-discrimination. So again, I'm happy to talk about different things, but that was more what I was expecting. But yeah, I'd be happy to look at that, or actually Courtney probably would be the one to do it, because she's the one who technically assigned you all. I'm here because I'm in charge of the non-discrimination matters, so that's sort of my bailiwick.
I can bring up one that did they tell you the juvenile curfew that we talked about as well?
I was not aware of that.
Then I can go to the non-discrimination. So for my questions for the non-discrimination, I went through, or unlawful discrimination, I went through it. And is there any data like out there to track the number and types of complaints that were filed under the ordinance that the public can get?
I mean, the public can file open records requests to get any of that data. Now, we'll say, I mean, that data is quite limited, but you can have access to the files. There are pieces of information in them that are confidential, but in terms of the complaints, the vast majority of them are releasable. I can tell you today, we've had 10. And 6 of them have involved the homeless encampment. So it's kind of interesting. Kind of the homeless encampment. So those are, there's kind of a clump that are all associated with kind of a single subject matter in some respects. And then there's a few kind of outliers, and that's the bulk of what we have. So there's just very limited data, but what there is.
Okay. And then, so I didn't see it in there, but it's kind of the follow-up from like a complaint is filed. Does the government offer assistance and funding for like legal representation if it comes from, like if there's a valid complaint that comes from like maybe a business, like a individual business, or if it comes from like a government building or something?
Sure. So we don't provide funding to individuals and related to the process. What we do, and I'm the person who handles it, is if, say, you know, Sherry Hines, I want to file a complaint saying that someone is discriminated against me, or is more importantly, a business entity of some kind is discriminated against me. We once had someone who alleged their neighbor was discriminatory in some way. You know, neighbor disputes are not subject to the ordinance. But yes, if someone comes in and makes a complaint and it's timely and otherwise appropriate, my office, actually, regardless of whether it's timely or appropriate, we will take the complaint. We will begin that initial review. I'm the one who does that review. I will then kind of evaluate, is it timely? Is it appropriate? Is it under the subject matter of this ordinance? And then there are certainly sort of resources that we provide in the sense that there's a voluntary mediation program that we offer. I will tell you that no one has taken us up on that, but it technically exists. As you might imagine, a lot of people have very strong feelings on either side of these, so they may not feel that mediation is useful to them. And then secondly, once I reviewed it, if I feel that it's insufficient, it's inadequate, there's some sort of issue with the complaint, then I'm gonna let the person know that I'm sorry, that this isn't, I can't move forward with it for whatever reason. But if I do think that there may be grounds, like basically there's probable cause of whether this has occurred, is basically the standard that I'm gonna use, then there is a process where we take the case before the administrative hearing officer, which in this case is the same person as our municipal court judge. So it's a dual role, but in the same person. And there can be a hearing. We have only had a few cases who've gotten to the level of having a hearing. And because of the complainant not being willing to participate, none of them have gone forward to actually have a hearing.
And one last question. When we were passing out the brochures for like, if you had a complaint, like do the QR code go here, in October at the fair, I talked to someone who was experiencing anti-Semitism, if you remember her.
Vaguely.
She was talking to me when I handed her the brochure, and she had a question about one of her employers, past employers, kind of microaggressioning her online through Twitter. And she asked, does that count? Like if I were to post something like that, like they were basically harassing her for her faith through Twitter. And I was like, do you amend it? Are there mechanisms in place to kind of, I don't know, bridge that gap from how online racism might work, discrimination might work there? And I didn't know what to tell her.
Yeah, no, I don't know that there's a good answer to tell that person off the cuff. I would say that everything we do in this realm is all incredibly fact specific. So anytime I get a case, I'm genuinely looking at what this person has told me. Does it meet the ordinance? And oftentimes I have to go back to that person and say, hey, I need some more information about what happened. I'm trying to think, you know, in that kind of circumstance, I think it really depends on what was said and how significant it was. I'll give you an example that's sort of similar. We had one complaint where the person worked for an employer and was very frustrated because a coworker had made unwanted advances and obviously inappropriately should not have done that. There were cultural differences between the complainant and the alleged offender that might have explained some of the behavior. And this person went to their employer to their credit, had a very clear policy for how to deal with complaints. I think a lot of people are under the assumption that, hey, if X person does anything, the answer is fire them. And traditionally in employment, that's actually not the way that we handle things, unless it's incredibly egregious, right? And so to that business's credit, they had sort of an aggressive discipline system. They talked to the person, they counseled them. There was an attempt to resolve the issue within the lines of their policy. And the person who made the complaint was just very upset that this person wasn't fired. And they wanted us to make this business fire that person. And that's something that we just can't do, right? Like, we're not going to move forward saying that a business entity violated your rights when they're following a lawful and appropriate HR policy of progressive discipline, even though that individual may have done something that they shouldn't have done. That's kind of the dynamic that you get to. So I don't know what this employer, like, I don't know if it was their supervisor or coworker or things like that, but I think there would be some questions about what did the business do and how did they respond to this? Because when we think about this ordinance, one of the things to remember is kind of like, what is the teeth to this ordinance? Like, what do you get from it? And there can be $1,000 fine. But one of the main sort of pieces of teeth that's built in is that if it's a pattern, if there's reoccurring complaints against, for instance, a single business, they can theoretically lose what people refer to as their business license, which is their occupation tax certificate. So, I mean, we've never gotten anywhere near that, but that's the possibility. And so the question is, like, are we going to take a business's right to operate in Athens-Clarke County because someone disagrees with a disciplinary decision? So I don't know if that's a particularly helpful answer to your question. What I would say is, anytime any of you or any member of the public is watching this has someone say, I'm concerned about X behavior, the best thing you can tell them to do is fill out a complaint, give us as much facts as they possibly can about it, and that way we can evaluate on a case by cases, because it's just too hard to sort of armchair quarterback it without knowing all the details.
Generally, this body is interested in recommending an ordinance change for the commission. When and how might they need to engage with the attorney's office?
That's an excellent question. So it's actually in our charter, it says the attorney's office has draft all ordinances that goes from the American Commission. So it's really important to engage with us as early as possible. Not only because, like, sometimes there are things that bodies may want to do that they just can't, or that the government can't do, or that are substantially different from what an appropriate, like, end game might be. So the earlier we're involved, or earlier coordinator is involved, the best chance we have of giving you some good direction or helping you write things. So what we see a lot of times, especially with bodies that are getting outside assistance, is that what might be really appropriate in Washington, D.C. or a different state might violate a law or a constitutional provision here in Georgia. So getting us involved so that we can assist you earlier is certainly best. So we don't want you to spin your wheels.
So what's the procedure of getting you involved? Because this has been like a thing that's been ongoing, that we've had like people come and speak to it, and that's why when this here started, a few meetings ago, we asked for you to actually come in because we've had everything ready and the proposal's been brought in, we've had the speakers come in, and it seems like it hasn't made it to you guys. So, like, how do we get it to you so you are involved in that process?
I think a lot of that is like conversations with your liaison, because I don't think there's a formal structure, like it has to happen at X point or in X way. But I think, a couple ways that could happen is you all can take a vote and say, we are voting to ask that, our staff liaison provide this version to the attorney's office for review and feedback. I would say that we traditionally prefer to receive things electronically so that we can review them. And then we can actually provide you with an attorney-client privilege memo about our thoughts and edits that we might suggest. We tend to prefer that versus coming and discussing in a public meeting, because obviously a public meeting is recorded. We can't give you confidential legal advice in this type of setting. So we wouldn't want to say, for example, hey, there's a challenge with this, if you do this, it might be challenged in court at some point. you know, sort of undermines our goal in trying to help you get where you want to be.
I tried to find the dress code ordinance and I have no idea. I found it for specific situations, like if you go into the jail, you have to wear this. Where is it in the?
Yeah, no, I brought it. And you're not wrong to have had trouble finding it. So I'll say anybody watching it online, if you have ever searched for ordinances, the best way to go is to Unicode, which I'm sure you went to. If you can just search MUNI and code and it will come up for Athens, if you put Athens. And if you type in the words dress space code, you'll find it. It's usually one of the first search options, but you wouldn't necessarily know it's there because it's buried in our alcohol code. Why is it there? It's because it is directly tied to people's alcohol license. So in the same way that I talked about our non-discrimination ordinance, if someone violates the dress code and the downtown dress code ordinance, they can have their alcohol license taken away. And there's a long explanation for that, but basically the idea is that governments, as a general rule, don't get to interfere with the private right of individuals to contract and behave. So whenever we can tie things to licenses that we have control over, we have more ability to do things. And so this ordinance has already been challenged in federal court and in state courts, so we highly recommend that there be no changes to the dress code ordinance. But if anyone wants to see it, it's in chapter 6.3, and I forget I won't print it off the relevant order, but it starts at H and I. And these apply, the key thing for you to know is that these only apply to certain types of alcohol licensees. They do not apply to restaurants. Restaurants and I think probably every alcohol code are defined as businesses that derive more than 50% of their income from food. Full disclosure, I think there are a lot of businesses in town that are restaurants that maybe not actually are restaurants. Like, I can't prove it, but I have some significant questions about whether they actually derive 50% of their income from food. But nevertheless, when we're talking about the dress code ordinance, it only applies to bars, not to restaurants. But yeah, fundamentally, it says that they have to post a dress code because what we were dealing with at the time that this was adopted was that there were bars downtown who would let in frat boy A wearing baggy clothes or whatever, sneakers, and then, you know, minority person of color would show up in exactly the same attire, and suddenly there's a dress code that doesn't allow that person. So that is what this ordinance is allowed is intended to do. And it doesn't say they can't have dress codes. They have to be enforced uniformly. They have to be posted clearly and they have to be available. So I'll be happy to give you a copy of it if you want to have that. But we have not had a case since kind of the early days of that. And I think the main reason is that all the bars got the message when we had the litigation and we won all of that litigation. So you know, I hope I hope that behaviors have changed. That said, that may not be the case. So it's certainly possible that people just don't know and are not coming forward, you know, with the treatment that they've gotten. All I can say is that the complaint process is exactly the same. If you believe it's dress code discrimination or just kind of regular discrimination under unlawful, broader type of discrimination under unlawful discrimination ordinance, you can file the same complaint, bring it to our office, and we'll be happy to investigate it.
How would someone prove that?
Sure. So the case that we handled, that was the one that we actually litigated, and my coworker handled it, and it's been close to 7 years, I think now. So I don't remember all the details perfectly. But what happened was a group of friends, I can't remember, it was 3, but there was a number of people, and I think they took photos. I cannot remember if they took video, but you know, honestly, all we really need is someone's testimony. So of course we can say like it's his word versus theirs, and whether that will be successful or not. But certainly 2 people coming forward and saying they had this experience versus one, you know, bartender or something, or bouncer saying something differently can be really compelling evidence. We certainly prefer if someone has audio, video, photos, anything that would kind of give us more certainty in what was done or what was visible. So I'd say in this case, what we'd like to see is photos that show that the dress code isn't posted. Or photos showing a dress code that doesn't match the behavior, or photos like this is what I was wearing and they said I couldn't go in, and oh here's some videos of them later letting in someone that was inappropriate. So not that people have to make their own case, but the more that they can do to provide that kind of evidence, the easier it will be for us to do so.
What are the people employed by the bar? Do they have to follow the dress code?
That is a great question. I would, like, again, I haven't had a chance to think about that question, but my off the cuff thought process would be that if an entity is enforcing a dress code against its patrons, that I would assume that any person in the establishment, including employees, would need to follow the same dress code. But I don't know, we'll have to see if that fact pattern ever comes to us.
I don't know if this would be considered making a change, but could it be possible to request for this to also be classified under the discrimination ordinance, or does it have to be specifically under only alcohol?
It needs to be under the alcohol ordinance because that's how you have the teeth of tying into the license.
Can there be a reference to it in the non-discrimination policy?
What I would say is that typically when we're drafting ordinances, we don't do a lot of cross-referencing. You know, they're separate entities that exist, and so, you know, people just need to know they exist. I think one of the things we've talked about with HRC in the past and with the inclusion office, back when it was called the inclusion office, excuse me, was trying to come up with some sort of like online hub on the website that kind of directs people to all these and makes it very easy to find, because you're right, the dress code is not easy to find.
Yeah.
I would never know this would be a discrimination issue whatsoever if you hadn't explained this.
Absolutely. What other questions you have?
On this and I'm here for the junior for years, I don't.
Yeah, and I used to do a lot of work, I was a public defender, so I represented a lot of kids with herpes, so I know a lot about it, I don't know exactly what you guys are proposing, so if you guys can send that to me, I'll be happy to assist you in the future on that, or Courtney certainly can.
And just to attorney's office or your specific email?
I would, so what I would say is, we tell all of our VCs, because we have over 50 right now, to send everything to your liaisons, and then your liaisons will communicate with the appropriate staff person. Otherwise, we just get inundated with, 15 people on one VC, and everyone has individual questions, so it's easier for us that way.
So we'll get you the information through the law.
About the other issues?
Yeah, the mental policy.
And Courtney will probably work with you on those. I'm sort of the gatekeeper for the non-discrimination.
And in fact, I'll stick around if y'all are okay for the remainder of the meeting, just so I can keep my ears open for any other issues that might come for us.
I have a question. Can you shed some light on, how we would move forward, with policies that have race usage in it, and if that would pose to be a problem, a potential issue, race-based policy?
Sure. So I think what you're asking is like preferential race-based policies, and the challenge with that, and there are a number of, one primary Supreme Court case that needs to escape me at the moment. But what the Supreme Court has said is that you cannot have a policy that preferences someone based on their race unless you've basically gone through a disparity study and you can demonstrate that there was historical discrimination in this particular segment of whatever it is you're looking at. I'll give you an example in a minute. That non-race-based attempts to address it have not been effective. So sort of like, this is the only way to move forward. And then you generally have to use those race-based strategies in a pretty limited time span. So you can't just use them forever once you have a disparity study. The idea is you should, back me up, a general principle that the Supreme Court has expressed is that we don't want to encourage treating people differently based on demographics, even though we all recognize that was done in the past and shouldn't have been done. So the idea is, if you're going to do them, there has to be data that demonstrates why you need to, and then it eventually should fade out as you hopefully theoretically resolve the issue. So what I'll say is we have one disparity study that was done recently. The issue though is that just because we can say, based on the disparity study, that there was past issues in the government contract procurement process, we can't then extrapolate that to apply to everything else. So even something as specific as contracts for grants, like federal grant money, I don't think the disparity study specifically covers that. It was really only looking at local government procurement processes for things like construction contracts or, installation of carpet, things that, were done in the past and use local contractors for. So what I would say is, can it be done? Yes. It has to be very limited and it requires a disparity study to do it. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Okay, yeah, just asking that question because there is a proposal that we need to have to look over that, utilize to some degree raise.
Sure. What we tend to encourage departments to do when they're trying to address inequalities is to create things that are open to all, but where you might try to focus your efforts on reaching communities that have been disadvantaged or not as included. So like in HCD, when we're talking about trying to make it easier for minority, say, nonprofits to work with the government, we talk about creating training about our grant programs for nonprofits, make them available to everybody. But there's nothing wrong with you specifically targeting and inviting those entities that might benefit the most from it or might need it the most. So just avoid exclusion. That's what you want to do to make sure you're not running afoul of an equal protection.
So that would be just in the language, basically, to make it more broad and not specifically call out certain minority groups.
Or you can say like, think of example, like HCD, HCD is gonna come up with a nonprofit capacity building program available to everyone, but with specific interest in helping minority and women-owned businesses. Like that's appropriate, because you're not excluding anybody, but you're saying that an interest in this program is specifically to try to promote those disadvantaged groups.
As a community member, not part of this board, am I allowed to ask you a question?
Unfortunately, I would say that's usually to the chair. Usually citizens are not invited to give comment or ask questions. Sorry.
That's fine.
Would y'all like to pass the motion to take a vote on it? So everybody feels like they have to say this is okay, move forward, for participant to ask the attorney a question.
So what I would say is, I don't know that you have to make, you're the chair. So if you want to allow him to ask the question again, I will say I may or may not be able to answer it depending on what it is, but you're certainly welcome to let us.
Yeah, it's relative to the subject matter, I think.
Okay. Yeah, and the reason I'm asking this is for clarity. I heard something that you said, and what I'm proposing in this meeting is germane to what you're talking about. That's something for some clarity. If I understand you correctly, you said that in finding a resolve for a disparity that has been identified, that the resolve should be broad and inclusive. Did I hear you correctly?
No, if we're trying, I'm sorry, this is a complex question, but if we're trying to address a specific problem, for example, we recognize that in the past, people were discriminated against in terms of government contracting. In fact, what we want is a specific targeted approach to try to resolve that, provided that we have the disparity study, the data that says this exists, this is necessary to do that. When we don't have the disparity study and we're trying to do things generally, that's when we want a broader approach that's inclusive, so that, hopefully everybody can get some assistance, but you can specifically target this groups in need. Does that answer that question?
Yes, it does.
Sure. I am about out of time. Are there any other questions? Well, sorry.
No, thank you so much for your time.
Absolutely, thank you so much. If you could want that Supreme Court case, I can send it to you. It's long, but it's helpful in terms of explaining that. But I know Andrew knows a lot about disability study as well, so I really appreciate you all.
Yeah.
Absolutely, thank you for your work. You guys have a great day. You too.
Okay. All right, ready? All right, so, next on the agenda is acceptance of the November 2024 minutes. Motion to accept. Second. All in favor? All right, next we have the chairperson's updated report. Do you have anything? That's you. Okay, yeah. Well, we do have, I do have I guess an update, but it's still working. I'm not sure if we've been receiving outside emails. I have noticed people reach out to me saying they have submitted emails to the ACC Gov. HRC@accgov.com. Has anybody received anything? I did follow up with,
What are you asking?
Cameron, have you received any outside emails, like from Gmail or anything like that?
No.
From HRC@accgov? But I have numerous people that have reached out to me, so they sent it, and I've told them I haven't received anything. So I reached out to Cameron. I do have some screenshots of that. He sent it to the correct address at 10 o'clock, in the morning today, yesterday, about some time, and last week.
And
So,
it happened several times.
yes. So I followed up with Cameron to see if this, IT can take a look at this.
I think previously, like I know on my ACC email, which is the only one that's been working for a while, because I'm like coming from the last cycle. I think your email on there was a Gmail, like Todd@gmail something. It wasn't an ACC Gov. So that was like originally used, I guess, before you activated your ACC Gov.
Right,
Email.
well, I'm not receiving anything in my, I'm receiving ACC, emails, I'm in the feed for everything, but when they send something to HRC@accgov.com, I think we all should be receiving the email, from what I understand.
Yes.
But, so I'm not receiving anything, so I'm verifying that everyone else is also not receiving these emails. So that has to be addressed as well, because we have people sending in proposals, requests and everything, and not receiving it. And it would make sense that there's probably a firewall or something that's maybe blocking them from coming in. Okay.
So, first of all, Andrew Saunders, I'm the interim assistant manager for Athens-Clarke County. People and Belonging is one of the departments that I work with. I'm here to eventually talk with y'all about some stuff, but Cameron, I see that we actually in our system have an HRC.test, but I don't know that we just have the regular HRC.
Yes, we do have HRC,
Did I-
ACC goes
Did
up.
IT confirm that?
Yes, we,
They built
yeah,
it, cause I have to send it over to Jeff Montgomery and Barry.
Okay, because they have an HRC listserv, but I don't know, so maybe they need to run it.
And also, you guys, you may see something that says like Barracuda or something that comes in the afternoon. Those emails may be rerouted to the Barracuda system. Because that kind of is like a protector. So if you see something that says that Barracuda, and then always check that too. But,
I'm getting emails from HRC@accgov.com.
yeah.
You are.
Probably internally, when we send things to it internally, but externally, I don't think that we're receiving it. Well, we obviously aren't.
And there is a HRC.test@accgov in the distribution list.
Yeah.
But if you're getting any of my emails, they're coming from the HR. Or we can look into it.
Other than that, I think that everyone did vote on, just, I did request everyone to vote and, coming to that point where we have to get started. I think everybody participated in that. I do see the K-Day service. So we're, everybody is signing for that. Definitely like to have more participation. Other than that, that is.
Sorry.
That is it for, bio day report. Just move along to the next part of the agenda, people and belonging updates.
okay, so, there are a few things that we can kind of, in our next meeting. So previously, the HRC has voted on the scope of the Juneteenth, event coordinator. Essentially, you all, there's a scope that says to be free to the public, free parking. You all will look through it and decide whether it is, if you all like the scope, if there needs to be some changes to the scope, as we selected for a coordinator to essentially coordinate and create a Juneteenth program. So once we get this IT stuff situated, be on the lookout for you all's email, our scope for the RFP that will go out. so we can have a discussion about it in the next meeting. Also, there is a resolution that is being worked on that I sent to you all yesterday via the email. Did you all get a chance to look at it? Okay.
Building
Yes, building, it was sent at 10 o'clock yesterday, and then I
Yes, yeah.
talked to Todd, and he said he didn't get it, so I sent it again today at about 11:45. Early afternoon today.
Yeah.
I received your staff.
I've got the email, but only thing I've been getting is the agendas. And I did get the email about the local draft, that's it.
Mine didn't have anything attached, so it had attached for your review.
There's
There's no attachment.
it's not further than.
And it says you have to get, basically, but
Oh, it's at the top.
Look at it.
Yeah, so, this is a follow-up resolution, initially drafted, if you all recall, there was a resolution on LGBT plus, priorities of the community that was advanced by the mayor and one commissioner. And, regretfully, that resolution's kind of popped up and went on the agenda, and some of the feedback that we received and passed on was like, hey, bring a resolution on these kinds of topics, it'd be great if the HRC give you some insights of what you've asked them to do is advise you. Similarly, at the same time, we had a resolution on voting. Make a stop by our board of elections. So the mayor's placing the resolution that was shared with you all on the February voting. Resolutions are non-binding statements of intent. However, in our community, they can kick off some pretty important things. So for example, the work that's been done around Lennon Town started with a resolution. Other aspects we've had, some of our clean energy work was started with a resolution. So what is being asked of you is to review the resolution and to see if you have anything you'd like to share with the commission. And that can come in a couple of formats. It could be a recommendation to adopt. It could be a recommendation to not adopt. You could make no comment for resolution that you're sharing. Or you could have a recommendation to adopt and share some additional comments. Okay, we're really glad you're considering this. If, as you move forward, you may want to consider an emphasis on youth development or strengthening your discrimination ordinance. You can do that, and whatever you all recommend, you can share with them prior. So I'm sorry that this is short notice. While I think we were all, many of us were aware of these kind of community-based resolutions floating around, wasn't until early this week that I was aware that we would be placing it on February.
So this is where we open up some discussion on the resolution you already said.
I have it. So again, in that October festival that we did, the majority of people said that they really wanted to see more housing security, which is one of the options on here to allocate. I don't know how the money, and you can hear the funds are going to be split between all of these if they plan to do it just evenly, or by what is more important, I guess, to people. But overwhelming housing security and affordable housing is what the public mentioned, like all reasons, right? What they wanted to see and have help with from the government. So if I could say from what we have data from, that should probably be the priority from this resolution, because that's the most, because it's what the public wants to do. But obviously, the economic empowerment for Black and minority owned businesses is incredibly important. And how was education on that?
It's pretty high, but housing is still
Yeah,
Today's flag poll that is, what could the commission can actually do about housing, because it said exactly what you're saying, that it was a really hard thing. So it might be helpful if we could, copy that, just to have some idea, that the stuff of the local people try to do, what it is, what they can actually do, what sort of money they're working with, what sort of authority they're working.
yeah, and the
It
top
just
tier,
came out to me.
doesn't say like 45 million is what's being allocated, so it's allocated 45,500,000 to affordable housing, of designated for the redevelopment of Athens Housing Authority of Town Village. It's a big chunk of money, so. I don't know what that
Today actually talked about where it was going, which was really helpful, and the limitations on that. Like they said, they couldn't afford to allocate any more money for stuff. So if we knew that, you know, saying they should do that would make a whole lot of sense, because they've already said no.
Right.
And then they talked about who it is that has the authority to do it, what they could do, and what they are doing. Couple of times they said there's another project that they're working on to increase the housing in their village.
Yeah, I agree.
So, Meg, I think that, when we have the discussion about, fair housing and, accessibility to, you know, as far as all demographics, there still is a discrimination in place, even in that process. And I think that, you know, we keep pushing forward with just saying, you know, oh, it's the title, you know, fair housing or, accessible homes and so forth. And we just keep pushing that out, money keeps getting falling in, and then we don't address the actual problems and discriminatory practices that's embedded in that process. Then we're essentially creating a larger problem, because eventually you're gonna have people that says this is not effective, that this doesn't work, and then of course the funding is gonna eventually come to a halt, or, you know, there's gonna be a little bit more resistance. Because, you know, in my surveying that I've done last year, and research that I've done, majority of homelessness is attributed to one specific group of people.
Yeah.
And if you ask their experiences, they have trouble even finding supportive resources to even get them through the process.
Well, that was one thing I wanted to bring up too, for under the housing security point D, says continue to fund nonprofits, including local minority ones, to seek to develop transitional housing and supportive services for residents experiencing homelessness. So I would like to know how much of that 45,500,000 is going to actually support like the minority groups within experiencing housing insecurity, and like what nonprofit groups are they spending the money on to do that? How effective are they? How
There has
effective
to
have they
be a
been?
reevaluation phase, like, anytime money goes out, it needs to be evaluated and tracked of what the output was, the outcome was.
Yeah.
Every time. In fact, that disparity report that was just released with ARPA is an important reason why, because even in today's time, 0.06% went to a specific group, and over 80%, 90% to others. 99.9%. You know, so if we use that as like, you know, that this is how every other process is, even in fair housing, we do have a starting point.
One thing that might be helpful to clarify, when you're looking at the resolution and there's all the whereases, a lot of that is capturing either intent or prior activity. So the money that you see, that 40 million plus number, that's actually a historical annotation about some investments that have been made. So as I read over this resolution, it doesn't even recommend an allocation of funds at this point. That certainly could be feedback that you share with the commission of, hey, we recommend that following this resolution, you figure out what this looks like in your budget process.
Okay.
But they're not like a split of funding at this point. And Cameron's worked with a group on the American Rescue Plan, the ARPA funds, where you can see some of that performance data of how prior funds have been used, who's benefited or not benefited from them. if you haven't had a chance, they'll share that. It's worth a look.
I would like to somehow get into motion to how we would propose to allocate those funds based on what the community has already expressed to us. Is that something we want to talk about proposing?
I guess also part of our role is letting the community know where they can go to get the resources, because 9 times out of 10, even if you get allocated, they still don't know where to go.
Yes.
Yeah, you also have received another proposal. I think it actually should be shared because I sent it out this time, about maybe 15 minutes ago. But this proposal was sent to us by multiple people, but until we get our email addresses addressed, you excuse how you received it, but, this was sent by multiple people in support. And it does address, to some degree, how money should be spent, but the question I did have is, when we use minority and BIPOC and in these, in a resolution, does that address the impacted demographic? And that's the question that I have when I read over, because I read over the policy that we're looking over now, presented by Hope Jasmine Johnson. I read it when she presented it at the, mayor commission meeting. And, reading through it, that's what arises, the question that arises when I was reading is, okay, you talk about Black, Indigenous, people of color, and then you talk about minority. And we're talking about potential allocation of funding and programs, but does that actually address the community that's actually impacted?
I mean, is it too broad?
Yes.
Well, isn't that what the attorney was talking about, where it has to have everyone, but we can say, like, this is the community we are trying to help, but we can't specifically say it's for like a certain race or minority group. Is that what she was like implying?
No.
Yes, but, sorry, kind of, but she also spoke about, if the rules that are, for instance, that's already in place aren't being affected, then you can do a disparity so that you can prove that this particular, group may need a different type of ordinance or something more specific to benefit them.
With that number at the beginning, the rate of, I forget what it was, the poverty line, how we are above average, is that enough data to support that? Like,
So when you say we, right, then when you say we above average, then see what happens is in the conversation of like, okay, we talk about disparities, the poverty line. Well, if you say we, the average of we would probably be, would show a different picture than if you specify we as far as a specific demographic. So
I meant we as an app.
yeah, so like we as an Athens, you take the collective of Athens, right? And you say how many people are above the poverty, what's the average poverty line? Well, then that would overlook the actual, if there's a specific group that has 80%, 90% below the poverty line versus the other groups that have 20 to 30% above the poverty line. When you say the entire Athens, you're then still continuing, in a sense, you're not addressing the actual people that are most impacted because you're including everyone. In other words,
How do
like,
we get funding to do surveys and research? Because it seems like we're not gonna get anything done if there's no data to back it up to show that these things need doing and not just like, we got like 20 people at a fair, or we've talked to people, like, do we have money in our HRC? We would have a budget to, do some community needs assessment and research and get like some broad data. Like, I think, because if everything's coming back to like, we need to show that this needs to be addressed, like, how do we get?
well, have you looked at the ARPA disparity report? The Migration Plan Act disparity report?
Not if it hasn't come in my email, I haven't.
So it was done.
There have been organizations that have done needs assessments and disparity studies that have already kind of taken place. I don't know if I have the space to say this, but I would kind of do that research to see what those disparity studies, those needs assessments say prior to you all saying as HRC, hey, we should do a needs assessment.
So then should we compile it and make it accessible to the board to like, so we don't have to all like go out and look for all of this, like, can we compile the research or the data that's already out there into like something that's digestible to back up whatever housing proposal or resolution we'd like have it as an attachment? Like, is there software and data to compile the research that you're saying has already been done?
I think going back to the resolution, because not only did it hit on housing, it hit on minority businesses not being able to get resources. I think as HRC and whoever has any opinions, please let me know. I think we need to look at where the money is that's supposed to be available to these groups, and then to tie it to the group, figure out how they can get to the programs and the resources to fill the gap. I think that's like our role in that, is to figure out what's going on both ends and connect them together. So.
And we do have a disparity study specific to Athens-Clarke County procurement. And so early efforts on that are underway, which is really building out the infrastructure to track our procurement more accurately and streamline the vendor enrollment process. But that is really a bureaucratic, crummy answer. The meaningful activity happens when we are able to engage with vendors who have historically not done business or had opportunities to do business. And in the nature of the disparity study, that speaks to minority-owned businesses with the procurement activities of Athens-Clarke County. And that's not even best done through, say, a purchasing department. It is best done at the department level. For example, in my day job, we'll say, I represent central services. So we do buy the carpet and the paint, and we do a lot of services. And our minority vendor bench is very, very shallow. We just simply don't have access to the vendors that can do that, but we know they exist. So one mechanism that can happen there, as we've actually been engaging Dr. Epps before she left, our economic development, is like bringing those people together, making sure that they can get enrolled in business, and then like that warm handoff of like, hey, Andrew, I want to introduce you to these three people that are involved in painting, or these three people that are involved in whatever that business may be, so that you can talk with them, understand where they see themselves being competitive, the kinds of businesses they want to bid on. That actually is really productive, because now Andrew's department is going forward to bid. I'm like, hey, I want to make sure you know the bid is here. And then there's steps beyond that. So another one will be disparity studies set the stage for carve outs and contracts. So when we do like constructing a library or fire station, we can say whoever gets this bid is committed to make X% of business available to minority-owned businesses. But what I hear you all talking about is beyond the scope of Athens-Clarke County purchasing, and we heard from the attorney. And so if there's a concern about housing or legal access, like there are additional evaluation studies that can be conducted. What will be most helpful is if you all can describe what is the condition we're trying to tackle, and what is the local government's role in that condition, either as a contributor or a regulator, or is there one? At that point, I think people involving staff can engage with each other and other Athens-Clarke County departments and come back to you and say, okay, what we hear you saying is there's this concern of childcare. Here's what's been done in the past, but with you saying that we want to grow childcare providers for working income Athenians, here's some examples of what next steps would look like for local government. And I'm sorry that there's not like a clearer answer there, but that I think we can get really like wound up in the what or the how without going to like, why are we doing something, or what is the big picture we're trying to tackle?
Going back to what you said about, disparity with purchasing.
Right.
I know in DeKalb County with their contracts, they do, was it an MLBB, I think. It's pretty much an incentive where companies who are probably already aware of contracts and have that privilege have to subcontract or at least get
Yeah.
bonus points to further into the contract if they subcontract with a minority business.
Exactly.
So like, that's something that could be implemented into our county.
And that is something that has been put in process by our mayor and commission. We're in the early stages. But there are other disparities that everybody's aware of. Again, if the government's involved or has a role, that's kind of step one, is figuring that out. And there may be times where there are disparities that don't involve Athens-Clarke County even as a regulatory body. Education access might be one, and in that case, you're probably going to be more narrowly focused on like education or creating those conversations with people that are able to move the needle.
So I guess like as HRC, our goal would be like research, right? Bringing it to government, and then after doing that part, bringing it to community. I'm asking, yeah, I'm not.
That's what I'm getting at, it's like, do we need to research to reflect the housing that you guys want, the opinions of at the fair? So that money, you can say, hey, this is where it's needed, based on what the attorney told us, you guys are showing, this is where we need to fund it.
And it sounds like part of that research is looking at what's already been done, and it's already out there for us to figure out what else we need to know.
And if your interest is in housing in the near term, it's a good time to talk about it, because our housing and community development department is about to engage on, it's called the analysis of impediments. What are the barriers to accessing fair housing? That's going to be done in partnership with some researchers from UGA, but I think you all asked people belonging, you probably ask them to come in and talk about that, and talk about what the next steps are, and if there's a role for
What was that called again?
analysis of impediments.
And I think Dr. Epps had like suggested that we did housing
Yeah.
development to come speak to us, because housing keeps coming up over and over again, and it's like
So what I understand definitively, is that there has to be, an effort for us to go and get acclimated on some, historical or previous, disparities that's been already conducted. We all need to get on the same page with that, so we can better address, I guess, this particular proposal. And I don't think we're gonna do that all in this one setting, so maybe we will have like a special meeting, a special call meeting, in between now and the next mayor commission meeting, after we all get acclimated. And so I guess I have a motion to table, this proposal, with needing further research, and, that's a motion. Okay, second, so, we're gonna table this, and then we'll have a special call meeting, and we'll stay tuned with the update.
All right, so from what I'm hearing is that this resolution will be tabled for a potential special call meeting to happen before the mayor and commission votes or hears this resolution. Keep in mind, I think that is the first Tuesday in February, Andrew?
Yes.
So that means between now, January 15th, and I think that is what, February 4th? We would have to have a meeting to discuss the resolution, just to keep that in.
Is that something we could just do virtually for like a special meeting, or would we have to be in person?
We would have to come in person and meet quorum. Meet quorum. Yeah.
And you may start thinking about your subcommittees. If you're gonna start breaking things up, having your specific people to do your research, your specific people to do engagement, specific people dedicated to hours, I'm just start thinking about, the subcommittees as well, because you're gonna need it in the end to bring all this stuff together.
So do y'all think through email, like in the next week, we could break that up and then by the 29th meet? Because that'll be the week right before they go.
And I think the 29th would be because initially, this meeting is supposed to be the third, Wednesday of the month. We moved this up earlier because of Martin Luther King Day, which is Monday. So, we could do the special call meeting on the actual day that you all were supposed to meet. I believe that's January 20. No, it's the 28th, I wanna say. 29th, January 29th. This is.
Can we get it something next week?
Okay. I can make sure we get it on the agenda. I want to,
Yeah, we don't
move
have
to
to
that.
for update.
Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
all right, then we can continue on with the meeting.
This proposal.
Okay.
discussion.
Oh, yeah.
Get wrap that up.
Okay, so you, yeah. You would already know.
Motion for special.
Yeah, I'm gonna give y'all this one more update and then we'll do all the voting and stuff. So it has been brought to our attention that in January of each year, this body is to re-elect a new vice chair and chair. We are in January. I know some of you all have only been a part of the commission for about 5 or 6 months or so. So we're at the time. I wouldn't say it has to be done today. Maybe this would be saved for the special call meeting. It has to be done today. So you all today, by the time we leave, have to vote for a new chair and vice chair. It's something that we can kind of do right before the meeting ends so that we can continue on with the meeting and then we'll move forward with that. All right, so that concludes our. Go ahead.
Just 2 quick updates. Thank you all for responding and voting on those features logos. We will be moving forward based on your votes via email with option number 2. So thank you very much. I will send you what that looks like in the next couple of days, just to confirm. And my last update is I'll leave it to the February meeting, but just want to put it on your radar. I will have you look over in a mayor and commission agenda item that for Juneteenth and Pride flags to go up. I will just have you all look at that and make those recommendations before we put them in their agenda for March. So just wanted to put that on your radar. That will be coming. I will send that via email in the next week or so. And that way you can look at it and have those thoughts for February.
And I will send you all the instructions for, MLK Day. I will send it via email, and since you're having issues, if you're fine with sending text, I'll need to get out there for you. I'll send you via text the same agenda at that time, so that we can have that day out.
Now we can kind of move on to the voting portion and I'll pass it back to the chair.
So again, we have to add the voting portion as an agenda item as well. So I have to pass a motion to amend this, voting for chairperson and vice president. Well,
Yeah.
it doesn't have to be, okay.
It's
Fine.
everything.
So, we want to get that out of the way now.
What the vice chair? Yeah.
Okay, so as y'all aware, our previous vice chair had resigned, with other career aspirations, so, at this moment, you have any nominees for vice chair?
I would like to put my name in consideration. What more responsibility?
Okay, anybody else? Anybody else have any nominate themselves or anyone else? Okay, so all in favor? All in favor? Morgan Light for, our vice chair from this day moving forward? All right.
Love you guys. Thank you.
Okay, so the next is up is for chairman. For those of you that are unhappy and unsatisfied, yes, I'm gonna go ahead and say I nominate myself, Todd Lovett for, chair. Is anybody else would like to nominate? Yeah, I'm ready to see it to me. So, yes, yeah. Okay.
I don't know what's going on, but it's all right. Okay,
Yeah, I have one of these.
thank you.
Okay, so we.
So you guys need to
Then we
vote.
have to vote. 5-4.
Melanie.
Yes.
Okay, so all in favor of Todd? And all in favor of Melanie?
Keep in mind that it is the chair's responsibility to send the agenda at least 8 days prior to the meeting. You just send it to us and we'll put the cute stuff on it.
Okay, sounds good.
And you'll definitely need to take the training, the BAC trainings, they're long, but definitely take the trainings as soon as possible, since you're gonna start with the gym.
Are they already in our email?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm gonna go back and email you to let you know where I'm getting.
Okay. And I can send it to your personal as well, just this one time, any other time we can.
Yeah.
So I believe that your role as chair will start in the next meeting. So Todd, it's back to you.
Okay, next on the agenda, we have public comments on old business. Okay, no public comment on old business. We're gonna move forward to old business. The board's HRC member headshots. Okay,
You weren't able to take were you able to take your initiative?
yes, I have that.
Okay. So everybody,
Does everyone have the headshots for the HRC?
If not, we can take them at the end of, immediately for, the website. And, yeah, get yours and then you can sign in.
All right, number two is development, outreach and educational material.
I believe Evelyn has shared that you all's logo has been determined. I don't think that's.
Yep, update on our color shirts now.
So we have the sizes now, so we can move forward, giving you all apparel.
Yeah, as you start thinking, flyers and things that you would like to see on that material for your outreach events. I've drafted up something that I'm happy to send over to you. The thing is, there is a lot of open space, because this is your voice and I want that to be reflected on those pieces. And so I will send that to you as well in the next, in that follow-up email that I give you with your logo. And my request is that you let me know what are the things you want to see on those postcards, on those flyers.
Is that something we can send directly to you, or we have to vote on the language?
You can send me that, what you would like, and then we can, I'll put some drafts together and then you can vote on it like we did last time. That seemed to be over.
She's not here, but she would say big banner, big yellow banner.
Actually, are we gonna have a big banner for the parade?
We didn't have the logo during the time,
Right.
so unfortunately, but the next time we're gonna.
Hold it up there.
Number three. Okay, number three, HRC role in upcoming events. You want to have anything with?
No.
Okay,
No, you all signed up for Martin Luther King Day of Service. That's our closest event. We can discuss what you all's role will look like in future events at a later date.
and number four is ACC Gov Attorney's Office. We just had our discussion with the attorney, so we're going to move on to public comment on new business. Do have someone here speak on new business? I believe it's, the agenda item number 3, American Freedom Proposal.
All right, you have 3 minutes.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. My name is Dan Hart, Friedman. I wanted to speak about, give me 1 second. Okay. Okay, so, I stand before you to express my wholehearted support for the proposed American Freedmen Business Initiative ordinance. This initiative, first of all, let me say that I sent a copy of that proposal to you guys this morning, and apparently you guys are having issues with the email, so you get it, but I'll make sure that you get it somehow or another. But let me start. I stand before you to express my wholehearted support for the proposed American Freedmen Business Initiative ordinance. This initiative represents a monumental step towards addressing the longstanding economic disparities faced by American freedmen, the Black American community. Historically, the Freedmen's Bureau played a crucial role right here in Athens, providing essential services such as education, healthcare, legal assistance to newly freed African Americans. Despite these efforts, American freedmen have continued to face systemic barriers to economic opportunity. The AFBI, American Freedmen Business Initiative, seeks to break down these barriers by offering targeted resources, funding, and support specifically designed for American freedmen entrepreneurs. This initiative is not just about providing financial assistance, it is about fostering economic empowerment, creating business opportunities, and building more inclusive community. It is important to recognize that broad terms like minority and BIPOC often fail to address the unique challenges faced by American freedmen. These terms tend to dilute the specific needs and experiences of this community. The AFBI aims to fill this gap by focusing on individuals with a freedman legal status, ensuring that they receive the support and opportunities they rightfully deserve. The AFBI will provide business incubation and acceleration programs, facilitate access to capital, offer training in business planning and financial literacy, and create networking opportunities. It will also advocate for policies that promote equitable access to resources, opportunities for American freedmen-owned businesses. By supporting this ordinance, we are taking a significant step towards economic justice and empowerment for American freedmen in Athens. We are honoring their contributions and resilience, and we are laying the foundation for a brighter, more equitable future for all. I urge the mayor and commission, as well as the Human Relations Commission, to the people and belonging to partners to support this ordinance and help ensure its successful implementation. Together, we can create a meaningful and lasting change in our community. And I just want to say,
For about 3 minutes. I believe the commission has the space to give extra time.
Yeah, you should.
So that's.
Motion for some extra time, 30 seconds. So, okay, we got so moved. We get a second.
yeah. And well, I just wanted to say that the things highlighted in what I read stem out of the disparity reports. This isn't a set aside initiative specifically for this harmed group based upon race. This is based upon harms that are illustrated in the disparity reports. Yeah, just like for you to consider that when doing this. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to move on to new business. Thank you for your submission.
Thank you. Am I done here? May I leave?
Please,
Thank you, Honorable.
please sign that paper. It's highlighted public comment. Sure.
So we're gonna talk about it. We're gonna ask
You
about
can,
it.
you can, it's up to you.
Oh, he's leaving.
Did you have questions? I'm sorry, I'm sorry.
I just had a question about
Sure.
the SBA minority program. And the reason I'm asking it is because one of the things that you always have to be concerned about is reinventing the wheel. And have those programs that were specifically set aside for minorities as opposed to African Americans, are they non-responsive? Have they not been helpful at all? Because that's gonna be the first question. Don't we already have something? I guess. So I'm asking you if you know that those programs have not been successful and this would fill that gap.
Well, I do know that they haven't been successful for this particular harm group.
Do we have any idea why?
Well, because when these firms were being addressed, first of all, from the federal level, and money started trickling down to the counties and states and so on, the harms were decided upon based upon a particular group. In other words, they were saying, okay, this here group has been harmed, but by the time it gets to us, then it becomes BIPOC, it becomes minorities and so on and so on. And this is basically something that's been happening since the Civil Rights Bill. The Civil Rights Bill was never originally drafted to be BIPOC or minority. That was added later, a couple years after the original drafting, if I'm not mistaken. They began adding minorities and these other things to it. But the harmed group, none of these other groups are actually harmed groups, actually. The actual harmed group is the Black American Freedom. It's the actual harmed group. That's the group that has actually suffered systemic, historical, systemic disenfranchisement. I guess that might be the right. It's a little bit of a trick bag when they say, well, we're not just going to address your issues. We're going to take what would address your issues and we're going to dilute that by including others in on it. We're going to include women, we're going to include handicapped, we're going to include people who have a particular sexual orientation. We're going to include people who come from other lands and all that, their type stuff. The set-asides that would rectify the harms done to you, we're going to put in this bag, but we're going to include all these other people in on it. And that's what's been happening, and that's happening here in Athens. In Athens, I think the Freedmen community is something like close to 30% of the population, and yet they receive less than 1% of contracts and things of that nature. University of Georgia sits on the graves of Black American freedmen, and yet Black American freedmen is like less than 1% of the population at the University of Georgia. Black American freedmen is less than 1% of the population. The school was built by American freedmen slaves, yet it's less than 1% of the population. So what I'm getting at is that there are students, this as an example, there are students who go to the University of Georgia under, minority type of considerations and things like that, but they're not the actual harm group. The actual harm group is American freedmen, Black American freedmen. And so what I'm proposing is that we address Black American freedmen, not to say that others, but we are particularly harmed for what, the last 400 or 500 years roughly. But, and we, so yeah. So to answer your question, bottom line, the SBA does not address a specific harm that is directed at the Black American Freedom community. First of all, it's diluted. And second of all, the Black American community get least appropriations from those settlement plans, so to speak, if that makes sense. Any other questions before we?
I do, I'll just make it quick.
Sure.
Under the program administration, you have a committee of representatives from local government, American Freedom community leaders, business professionals, and other relevant stakeholders. Have you identified who those are yet?
Under what?
Under the program administration in section 3, your committee that you put together are representatives from local government, American Freedom community leaders, business professionals, and other relevant stakeholders. Have you put that committee together, or is that what you foresee the program being?
Right.
Okay.
Oh, did you get that? Did you get that? Email this morning? But no one else did.
I sent it out again.
Oh,
You sent it during the meeting.
Yeah.
okay, right, and that's what it would look like. That's
Understood.
thank you, guys, I appreciate it. Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, good evening. Keep up the good work.
Thank you for being interested and involved.
Absolutely. My information is here. If there's any other way that I can get involved and be a part of, a service to the community, let me know. Very interested.
All right. Okay, we're on to new business, the logo and branding updates in progress. Well, it was just provided. On to the next is future events and planning. We did go over that. That's Martin Luther King Day is coming up, and we have Juneteenth.
Yeah.
And start thinking about any community education sessions that you may want to hold.
Okay, and
What does that even mean? I'm sorry, so,
A community education session is just basically where you host an event, like somewhere in the library, and people come out, kind of educate them on who you are and what you do.
And also,
Yeah.
also have a space to kind of hear from the community on what issues they're having.
are there a certain number that we should do a year?
That's totally up to you all.
If we host one of those, do we have to under quorum or over?
It would have to be under quorum, because if it is quorum, then it would have to be recorded, minutes would have to be taken, it would have to be like an official meeting. So you guys can do shifts. Let's say you can do shifts, you can have people come in and kind of greet people, and then you can kind of switch out and have the other group there, or you can have a speaker, you can invite someone to speak, and then you all can take turns on who shows up, because it's totally up to you all.
I was gonna say, so we can pretty much just like host the event.
That might be a good way for you to break into subcommittees, because that committee would be specifically designed to do that particular type of outreach.
Okay, any questions any further questions on that? Okay, so number 3 on the agenda item was the American Freedom proposal. I did get that out. Hopefully everyone did get it. I think that within this proposal and the other proposal, I think that we're going to cross paths in far as research. I got a chance to look at the proposal earlier, because, I got feedback from multiple people, and they have a petition out as well.
About this?
Yes. And, I think that petition was created yesterday. Yeah, so, it garnered a lot of signatures. I read over it, and it does raise a lot of questions, regarding the attorney as well. I think that we're going to cross-pass in our research in this process for the other proposal, for local Jackson Johnson. And I think while we're looking at this, we should also look at, specificity, which is what he brought into the conversation. Definitely gave me something to think about as well. So, the floor is open. That's the last agenda item for new business. Floor is definitely open. Any sentiments or?
You actually have something for y'all, will need to be asked to consider. So a committee of the mayor and commission, one of their kind of working groups, is reviewing boards, authorities, and commissions as a whole. I think you heard Sherry Hines say that there were more than 50. And so part of their looking at overall operations, kind of questions like, how hard does the test need to be? But also, how many and for what purpose? And so what is, I'm happy to relay to you is in the engagement we've had with commissioners, there is unanimous support that HRC is something they'd like to continue to see move forward in a very much similar manner as what is y'all's system. What you're going to be asked to share comments on is there's actually a dormant group in our ordinance. It is, let me pull it up here, it's a lovely one. There is in our ordinance, there's something called the Commission on People with Disabilities. It was a 30-person commission created following the implementation of the Americans with Disabilities Ordinance. As best our records could show, they probably have not met in 20 years. With this said, their purpose, and we'll send you the ordinance and for this to consider, their purpose was to promoting employability, housing, state and local government services, public accommodations, transportation of the telephone system for persons with disabilities living in the community. So it's easy to think of this as a very early precursor to the kind of work that you all are considering. They have asked for feedback from staff and from you all. Should this responsibility be included directly under you? So basically, should you merge with a dormant or take on the responsibilities of a dormant board? I'll plant some seeds. I don't see that it's not under your purview already.
Yeah.
But I think the question here is, in your ordinance, it talks about kind of your charge, if you will. I think if this went forward, it would be like you would have that broad charge and then a specific emphasis on individuals with disabilities. And in this room today, I've heard conversations about broad versus specific and the benefits, the challenges with that. So, letter coming from us that says, hey, the Mayor and Commission would like your comments on this. And y'all just need to chew on it. And if you have thoughts to share, this is a great time to do it. Whatever you share, we will relay back to that. What I don't see coming out of this is like any kind of like, oh, let's just be done with HRC. It's just more the soul searching of what do we do with individuals with disabilities, and in particular, this board that existed 20+ years.
I'm gonna be honest, I already included people with disabilities in our
Right.
cadence already.
And I think 20 years ago, like HRCs didn't exist, like you were saying, so there wasn't really like a board, there wouldn't have been a board like this, so my understanding, most other HRCs throughout the country also include people with disabilities.
Do we need to look at like the language in the bylaws to make sure like there's something that's not missing?
Oh, there's no way we have bylaws. But what we will do is we will send you their ordinance, we'll send you a copy of your ordinance. And the question is, do you have thoughts on explicitly incorporating this into your ordinance or otherwise? This is one of the weirder things I've been asked to do.
That's saying a lot.
That's weird.
How will that language be incorporated? Like, will HRC stuff still be there? Be like, and also people with disabilities specifically?
Yeah, I think that would probably be where they land. So to give you some idea of next steps, there are other more meaningful boards, authorities, and commissions conversations that are gonna be happening about, so one example is we have a pension board and we have a deferred compensation board. They serve very different purposes. There's some really good reasons why they're separate, but our commission would like information on what happens if they were the same or unified. That's kind of a meaty, heavy discussion. Ultimately, what we've suggested to this working group is send forward a concept. Hey, all of my elected peers, we're thinking that we merge these two boards. And if you give the thumbs up, that is going to be the direction the staff and the attorney's office to go craft that ordinance. But if you think that's a bad idea, just tell us now, and we won't go work on all these ordinances and do all this change. So there's some sausage making to be had well after the vision is advanced. So you'll need to think about it. I don't have, so what is, that is a really complicated way of me saying I don't have specifics.
Right.
And that may be something that you want to share back. It's like, why would you do that? Or if you did that, we think it would be important to have it explicit or broad or whatever.
Is it also an option to say we think it?
Yeah, it's absolutely.
Not 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Well, if those 30 members were here current, I'd be like, oh, what's your opinion, members of this board, that we can merge, but since it doesn't seem that that's the case, it's a little bit different. Also, I could not fathom a 30-person quorum. Right. Which may be why they haven't met in 20 years. So, that communication should be coming in the next week or so. And whatever you choose to share, or if you choose to stay silent and offer no opinions, we just want to be sure you get a chance. Thank you for your time.
Okay, I think I'm gonna, well, most of the table, that discussion for the next chair person. Stand for those vote for that, okay?
It's sensitive.
Yes, they will be meeting again. Typically, it's gonna be the third week of February. But lately, they've been a little squirrely on exactly when they want their meetings, date and time, but we will, and that letter will communicate to you when they're next talking about this.
Okay. We will be meeting before that, I believe.
Well, yeah, that should be the next thing on the table before we adjourn, is to you all to vote when we will meet again, which was likely happening into this month, but that's when you all to decide.
I thought it was.
October 29th.
Well, I don't think you all like formally voted on it.
Motion to, motion to, have our next meeting on January 29th. Special call meeting.
So we still have our February meeting?
Okay, that gives us,
What time?
6 o'clock.
To 7.
Yeah, 6, it'll be 6 to 7.
It shouldn't be. Yeah, this was just a special, this is, we have attorneys here and there was a lot to go over, so that's why we were here for. Well, so far we're early.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll second that.
Yep.
Okay, all in favor? Okay, so next meeting is January 29th at 6 p.m. here, 120 Dow Street.
I'll be sure to put that on the agenda.
Then, next we have announcements. Is there any announcements?
Are there any volunteers for the kickoff on Monday? Or is all the people helping out just on the parade?
No, I was going to register the opening city
Okay, nice.
1 to 3:30.
Okay, nice. I was just gonna make an announcement
Am I there by myself?
regarding the kickoff, but I don't think we have any Do we have any other?
No, because you're gonna get their shirts.
Yes, I'll get you our shirts on Sunday. I have to come help set up for Martin Luther King Day service on Sunday. So I'll get you our shirts and make sure that you all have them when we see you all.
So what are we gonna take from them?
Yeah, if I don't see you all before the 1 o'clock session, I'll make sure that you get this on Monday. That way, I would wear like a sweater, so I'm not gonna tell you what to wear. Maybe just throw the shirt on top of what you have, or you don't have to wear the shirt. You can save it for later. Yes, if you aren't able to make it, I will ensure that in our January 29th meeting that you will get your shirts if you're unable to make it.
And last, if I didn't get a shot for the meeting. Me out, and then that little long area, we will take care of that.
Okay. Is that it for the announcements?
My shot.
Anybody else have any announcements?
If we have like resources as far as like disparity data and whatnot, like who should we send that to? That way it's circulated.
HRC.
Hopefully it'll work by now. I think internally it does work, and I sent it to the internally, but I think it's the external email that's bouncing back some reason.
Yours didn't come through today. I don't swear.
Well, I just sent it during the meeting because he said he sent it, other people sent it emails as well.
We reached out to IT, so
So like the previous body did.
Yeah.
And you have her.
I was confirmed.
Yeah, and you can reach out to her and or that subcommittee. Maybe I can.
Yeah, I have Kimberly,
Yeah, you might be. We don't.
I have a lot of oil and disparate reports. I can send it. I'll send y'all what I have, but doesn't mean there's not more research that could possibly be done. Some other docs, if you find anything. Yeah. Right, yeah.
How does that work like subcommittees with meetings? Like
You can have breakout sessions in the meeting, or you could meet as a full body, and then towards the end of the meeting, you can have the breakout sessions where you could go in separate places and have your sessions for that subcommittee.
Or you can meet at different times because you all don't have quorum. There might be like 4 people in a subcommittee. You guys can meet at Jittery Joe's if you want to. It's up to you. You can meet on Zoom or however. You can do a group phone call, but because you're in a subcommittee, there isn't quorum. So you all can kind of meet and talk however you want as a subcommittee. And then you will just report back to these full body meetings. And then you vote on stuff.
What were the subcommittees you suggested in the beginning, rest of the proposal?
Yeah, I think the subcommittees were broken down by you all's action plan, goal areas. I believe there are three. There's like an education one, there's a policy one. Yeah, so you all's subcommittees were broken into those 3 action plan goals. That is the easiest way to, I would think, but it's totally up to you all how you want to create your subcommittee.
If you want to do one that focuses solely on engagement and community, you can have a subcommittee for that. You can have a subcommittee that focuses on the research. You guys decide. We'll vote on it.
Yes, prior to you all, we can adjourn the meeting and, you know, conversation and all that.
Point of order. Motion to adjourn. All in favor? Meeting is adjourned.
In terms of that, you can have more research. We're gonna, I guess, if you guys We can move forward with posting concept. The fire commission for more trainings. We're just trying to give you all responsibilities and try to do more. We can help you all.